Hello, my name is Ethan Joan, and my group mates are Evan Ortega and Emily Forsberg. This is our presentation on climate change and optimism bias. So what is climate change? We are defining climate change as significant changes of the Earth's features based on changing weather patterns for an extended period of time. Why is this a problem? Some of the things we're experiencing as a global society today are global warming, rising sea levels, melting ice caps, various ecological disturbances across the globe, and extreme weather changes. The graphic to the right depicts some of the consequences we'll be facing if climate change continues. Some of the potential consequences of climate change: submersion of coastal cities, the extinction of tropical reefs around the world, a loss of more than a tenth of Earth's plant life due to changes in various ecosystems, as well as unpredictable changes. The ability to harvest crops, human displacement due to harsh environmental conditions, and due to the submersion of coastal cities. What is the science of climate change? Basically, greenhouse gases such as methane, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide get trapped in the atmosphere instead of dispersing their energy into space, which causes a warming effect. Vehicles, the agriculture industry, and virtually the burning of any kind of fossil fuel contributes to this warming. The surface temperature today is approximately 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels just 250 years ago. The major consequences, like the submersion of coastal cities and native extinction, are likely to occur if global warming surpasses 2 degrees Celsius, and this is according to the IPCC, which we'll talk about in a coming slide. What is the global policy surrounding climate change? Last slide, I mentioned the IPCC, which is an intermittently released scientific research paper aimed to inform of the dangers of climate change and guide international policy and decision making. Basically, this is the backbone for the validity of climate change science. Several global agreements have come to fruition over the years, but the most recent one, the Paris Agreement, was signed in 2015 by the members of the United Nations and aimed to cap the surface temperature degree increase to 2 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, the Trump administration withdrew the US from the Paris Agreement on June 1st as a part of his America First policy.
We're going to switch focuses and introduce the idea of optimism bias as an inhibitor for mitigating climate change. Optimism bias is the belief that negative events are less likely and positive events are more likely, which leads to underpreparedness for emergencies such as climate change. To give you all a little more detail, we're going to turn to a TED Talk by Telly Sharot, a professor of cognitive science in the Department of Experimental Psychology at University College London. She defined optimism bias similarly to us, but included that without optimism, we would be slightly depressed. Around 80% of the population experiences optimism bias to some bittersweet extent. This particular bias keeps us happy and hopeful, but also makes us less responsive to negative information. Similarly to stated above, this can lead to more risky behaviors and faulty planning. To cement your understanding of optimism bias, we are going to go through a couple of examples. In 1986, Neil Weinstein managed a study involving New Jersey residents and their perceived likelihood of health problems. The survey asked participants regarding 10 different health problems what their risk of getting it was compared to others, the seriousness, preventability, and past experience with the problem. The survey found that even with knowing the risks, people see health problems as less likely to happen to them than to others. A second example is from George Lowenstein, a behavioral economist who asked people how much they're willing to pay for a kiss from a celebrity in different amounts of time. Immediately, in 3 hours, in 24 hours, in 3 days, in 1 year, and in 10 years. Lowenstein found that they are willing to pay most to get a kiss in 3 days. Waiting a short amount of time was what they deemed most valuable and what made them most optimistic.
Currently, the survival of our species and society is at stake. According to Emily Atkin of the New Republic, there is no logical reason to be optimistic about the planet's survival. David Sirota of The Guardian claimed that we are facing the end of the world in 2040, and David Wallace Wells declared this new era that we are entering climate genocide. The societies that we have built rely on a certain predictability and stability that accompanied the era of the Holocene. Though the Anthropocene is bringing new challenges, as global temperatures are rising 1 degree Celsius since 1850, carbon concentrations are higher than they have been in 3 million years. Earth has not experienced such a severe climate shift since before the last ice age. While there are perfectly valid reasons to be pessimistic, and even fatalistic, we also see climate change met by optimism. As Steven Pinker puts it, the key idea is that environmental problems, like other problems, are solvable given the right knowledge. If we stick with scientific discovery and technology, we will find a way to solve the environmental problems, including climate change, that we're currently facing. The Vox article by David Roberts takes it a step further and compares blind optimism to conditional optimism. The difference between them, according to Roberts, is that blind optimism is like a child expecting his parents to build him a treehouse. Conditional optimism is that child being confident that he can build a treehouse if he's given the tools. Those who view climate change with blind optimism are looking at it as an issue that either doesn't exist or that's going to solve itself. This stops people from acting, as they're not concerned with the issue, or they think that everything will return to normal on its own, and that we are not responsible for making that happen. However, when conditional optimism is applied to climate change, he is saying that climate change can be solved if we as a society are given the tools. This example of optimism is rooted in the potential for new industrial processes, but it also assumes that people are making the effort to supply the tools to mitigate against climate change. You don't need to be a scientist or a politician to make a difference in the environment. Even small changes can have a big impact. Look up environmental groups in your area to see what events are happening. Nonprofit groups such as the Sierra Club and Green Gas have chapters all over the US and beyond. Contact your local government leaders to find town hall meetings or events that you can participate in and share your voice. At home, reducing your water, heat, and electricity usage helps lower emissions. Spending less time driving also decreases pollution, so try to walk or bike or use public transit whenever you can. Any action is better than inaction, and making these changes will encourage others to do the same.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. This is our works cited page, and the articles we spoke about and the TED Talk can be found in the YouTube video description. Thanks again.